Tough loss for Oregon football in the Rose Bowl as they fall to Ohio State 41-21. I am JR, your host here of the Big Ten Huddle. Come and like and subscribe, comment, let me know your thoughts on Oregon and the loss to Ohio State and just everything that went on this season for them as well, because it really was a very good season for Oregon football. It just ends in such a way that is just rather sad for Oregon fans, and we're going to talk about that. But Oregon fans, I got to let you know, this was a season for the history books. You got to keep your head held up high. The Ducks entered their first year into the Big Ten, and they left their mark this year, winning the conference title, defeating Ohio State at home, going completely undefeated. There was no team this season in the Big Ten that ever really looked like a better team than Oregon. Wisconsin gave them a good game at Wisconsin. Ohio State gave them a very good game in Autzen, and Boise State gave them a good game. But in terms of the Big Ten regular season, Penn State gave them a good game in the national championship. But in the regular season and the Big Ten championship game, there was no team that really looked like the better team than Oregon this season. I think that is a lot to say about Dan Lanning and this coaching staff and who they have in charge of this team and this program right now. Despite their incredible run, Oregon faced a huge challenge in the college football playoff against Ohio State. The hottest team right now in the playoffs and the team that will most likely win it all. Just did a video about that, so you can check that out as well. We also talk about this game a little bit that we're going to talk about here, and then get into the Oregon kind of season of it all situation. But let's not forget, this season was monumental for Oregon football, not just for the season, but also for the program and for respect, not just throughout the country, but essentially in the Big Ten as well. There were a lot of people with Oregon coming into the Big Ten. They did not respect Oregon. They thought, oh, well, yeah, Nebraska came in and thought they were going to handle things too. And look what happened there. Well, Oregon proved those people wrong, because Oregon had one of the best offensive lines in the Big Ten and one of the best defensive lines in the Big Ten all season long. Dare I say, the best offensive line, the best defensive line consistently throughout the year in the Big Ten this year. Unfortunately for them, it just fell short when they fell against Ohio State. So what happened in that game? What can Oregon fans take away from it? Should you have concern for the future? Was it just a miscue and it is what it is? It all starts with Ohio State striking fast, right? There was a lot of talk about Ohio State or Oregon having so much time off, and Ohio State playing last week, and maybe Ohio State would be a little less fresh. I mean, pretty much every team, Boise State, Arizona State, Oregon, like all those teams started slow. Penn State came out in front and scored twice on Boise State very quickly. Texas did the same thing. Ohio State did the same thing to Oregon, and I mean, if you watched the Texas Arizona State game and the Penn State Boise State game, you were kind of like, okay, they scored on us early, that's fine, but we're gonna get our get back. The get back just never really came. Like, Jeremiah Smith had the huge touchdown pass within the first minute of the game, right? I mean, my wife said they scored already, and I was like, yeah, Ohio State scored already. So it just kind of happened so fast. And Emeka Ibuka, he made it clear that Ohio State was there to dominate with his touchdown catch as well. I mean, Ohio State had all the momentum because Ohio State had put up a 34 to nothing lead in the first half. Now, good on Oregon. They were able to go 10 plays, 75 yards to end the half and get 8 points. And you felt like there was a little bit of hope there, right? Like, okay, we score on this first drive in the second half, get a 3 and out, score on the next one. Then you're down 2 scores and you're looking at yourselves and saying, okay, this is a team with a lot of really good players. We can still do this. We can still make this happen. And that's what Oregon did. Well, not exactly, but Oregon did come out in the second half and score right away and then get Ohio State in a 3 and out. And it was like, oh my gosh, this might be happening. Like, Oregon fans were sitting up a little bit like, all right, this could be happening. And then on the other side, Ohio State fans are kind of like, getting a little nervous in that situation. But ultimately, it was the defense by Ohio State that was really able to halt the Oregon offense in their second drive of the second half that just completely stopped them. I mean, you have to admire Oregon's fight, and I think not only does that speak to the players, but that speaks to this coaching staff, right? Going into the locker room down 34-8, this coaching staff was still able to get these players, not just on offense, but on defense as well, to believe, like, you guys still got a shot in this game. And I've been somebody who's very vocal about Dan Lanning and thinking Dan Lanning is a very good coach. In my mind, Dan Lanning, if I was starting a program tomorrow, Dan Lanning is the coach I would probably want to put in charge of that program, just with the way he's able to lead his program, with some of the decision making, the hires and stuff like that he does. Like, if I had to start a program tomorrow, I wouldn't pick Kirby Smart. I wouldn't pick Steve Sarkisian. I wouldn't pick Kenny Dillingham. I would pick Dan Lanning because I just think he's that strong of a coach, and you saw it with Oregon coming out, the 2 yard touchdown run by Noah Whittington. For that moment, it looked like the power might have shifted. You heard the Oregon fans for the first time in the game really getting into it and really putting the pressure on Ohio State. But while Oregon did fight back hard, Ohio State, they eventually did answer, and I think in this game that eventually just said to us, like, you know what, it's Ohio State's day, and it's not Oregon's day. It's upsetting, it's frustrating, especially with such an amazing season, but sometimes that's what playoffs come down to, right? It was this team's day, but it wasn't your day. And it sucks, right? But it is what it is. Even with the odds stacked against them, Dan Lanning's squad, they are able to keep fighting. Dillon Gabriel is a warrior. I mean, Oregon fans should be so proud that he played for them for a season and that he was able to set records at Oregon with what he was able to do. There are bright spots in this game, though. Like, I know we're going to talk about Oregon overall here in a second, but let's talk about some bright spots, too. Like, Oregon did well, and Trayshawn Holden showed that without Evan Stewart playing, which, by the way, that was killer for Oregon to not have Evan Stewart. Whatever happened in the pregame, I don't know if like the flu rumors were real or whatever. I mean, Dan Lanning, he was very kind of mysterious about it. He just said that Evan Stewart got hurt in the pregame and he didn't go play after that. And so I don't know exactly what it was. And then Tez Johnson was kind of on the sideline more than you thought he would be. You thought he might have been used a little bit more. But Trayshawn Holden, the third wide receiver on this team, he showed out really well. 116 yards, 2 touchdowns, stepping up when the team needed him most. Dillon Gabriel was constantly under pressure, but he was still able to find Terrence Ferguson at times. And Terrence Ferguson did what Terrence Ferguson does, which is catch the ball and get some extra yards. But at the end of the day, the struggles, they were too hard to ignore. Oregon's offensive line couldn't hold up. Many people were questioning Ohio State's offensive line with their injuries and everything that went into this, and turned out Oregon's offensive line was the one that struggled a whole lot more as they gave up 8 sacks in this game. They couldn't establish a ground game, had negative rushing yards in this game, and I mean, when that happens, it's just kind of like Dillon Gabriel, you just throw your hands up in the air. Like, the other team scored 40 and we don't have a running game. Like, what do you want me to do? But Dan Lanning himself admitted, he said, we didn't have a good enough plan as coaches tonight, putting it on him as a leader does. And when he was asked a question about what happened tonight, do you think there was anything in particular? He just said point blank, we're not going to make excuses. We weren't the best team tonight. It is what it is. And I think you have to respect that so much. If you're an Oregon fan, if you're an Ohio State fan, whatever it is, you have to respect that because he really just own it and take it upon himself. And defensively, he just couldn't stop Ohio State's explosive plays. Travion Henderson's 66-yard touchdown run, the 40-some-yard pass to Jeremiah Smith, the 40-some-yard pass, I believe it was, to Emeka Ibuka as well. I mean, Ohio State had 4 different drives where they scored on 3 plays or less in the first half. Like, in that very first play, the fake screen to the tight end, like, sometimes you just throw your hands up in the air and you just say, that was really good coaching by them, and they kind of got him. So Taj Lapoy, if he's back next season, really needs to figure out some of that stuff, especially game planning for that stuff a little bit more. But make no doubt, Oregon's going to have really good players next year. They've brought in Theron Johnson, they brought in Dylan Thieneman. Like, they're going to have really good players next year. So if Dan Lanning can get this coaching staff right, if Dan Lanning, I'm not saying they need to get rid of anybody or bring anybody in, but just get this coaching staff right and game planning for the game. And I think he will, because like I said, I think Dan Lanning is one of the best bright young coaches in this sport. And let's just be honest, let's celebrate Oregon's season. Despite the tough loss, don't lose sight of what Oregon accomplished this season. In their first year in the Big Ten, they went undefeated in the regular season and they took home the conference championship. That's a huge achievement. They were able to defeat Michigan. They were able to defeat Ohio State, defeat Penn State. I mean, these are the three top teams in the Big Ten, and they were able to defeat all of them and win. So it's not like they had this easy road or anything. I know some people are saying that right now, like bullcrap. Like, get out of here. If you think that Oregon had an easy road to the number one seed in the nation, like you don't know what you're talking about if that's what you're saying. Oregon went out, they beat Michigan, they beat Penn State, they beat their rival Washington, they beat Ohio State. Like, they beat the powers of the Big Ten to show they belong, they are here, and they're going to win the Big Ten again here very soon. Whether it's next year or the year after, they're probably going to win the Big Ten again sometime soon. The season will be remembered as one of the greatest in Oregon history. Even if it didn't end with a national championship, I think fans and alumni will look back on this season and say this was one of the best seasons in Oregon history. Dan Lanning summed it up best. Adversity happens in life. It's about getting back up and what you do next. Oregon's future is bright. Oregon's future is bright. They have the talent and they've proven they can compete at the highest level. And I know Oregon fans hate mentioning this, but I think it's just the reality of it. And I don't know why you hate mentioning this. Like, to me, the whole NIL conversation is so stupid. Like, people want to try and dog Oregon for saying, like, oh, yeah, Phil Knight money. Well, guess what? It's legal. So, yeah, they got Phil Knight, somebody who loves the program. Go get one of your millionaires to love your program the way Phil Knight does. Like, it's such a stupid thing. And then on top of that, like, you think money buys everything? Like, look at Texas A&M. They bought everything with money, and look how terrible their program was. Like, you still have to have amazing coaches, not only to bring those players in, but also to create culture, create game plans to win games. This was the first game where Oregon's coaches really showed out in a bad way. You could argue maybe the Wisconsin game a little bit, maybe the Boise State game a little bit, but Boise State was so early in the year. That was really a game about just resilience and being able to win. And then Wisconsin, I really felt like it was just some bad play by Oregon in some areas. Like, I don't want to put it all on the players. I do think coaches deserve some discredit, but it definitely wasn't like the Ohio State game where the Ohio State Michigan game where Ohio State just had terrible game planning for that game. That is a game where you put it on the coaches and say you were not able to coach in that game. This was a season that was one to remember. You won't like the way it ended to remember, but it was one to remember. With a strong recruiting class coming in this year, I mean, you look at it, they're right there with Ohio State, and with the way they're recruiting in Ohio as well. Like, this is a team that's here to stay. Oregon is staying around in the Big Ten, no doubt about it. Even if Phil Knight stopped his funding tomorrow, this is a team in Oregon that's sticking around in the Big Ten as long as they got Dan Lanning as their head coach, because I do truly believe in him. They got key players returning as well. The Ducks are in great position, not only a great recruiting class, but bringing in great transfers as well. A pair of tackles out of the transfer portal, Dylan Thieneman coming in as well. Like, you have Dante Moore as the Oregon backup quarterback who started as a freshman at UCLA. Didn't have a great freshman year starting, but he did well enough that, like, you feel good with his experience and what he's going to be able to do and everything. Oregon fans, don't let this overshadow what's ahead for Oregon right now. Oregon is going to be a national powerhouse to look at in the future. You've always heard people talk about Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State. Well, guess what? It's Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon now, in my mind. Those are the three big powerhouses in the sport. Texas probably up there a little bit as well, but Steve Sarkisian kind of wishy-washy as a coach. I don't know if you can really say that or not. Whoops. Oregon is going to be a team that is looked after as a top tier program in this sport for at least the foreseeable future. That's just the way it is. It's the way they're recruiting. It's the way that they have national respect right now. This loss does sting for this team. But remember, it's just the beginning for Dan Lanning in Oregon football. He has built every single year. He has gotten better. And I do truly believe the best is yet to come for Oregon football. It's only going to get better. They're only going to improve. And under Dan Lanning, this is going to be a fantastic program. Like and subscribe. Definitely appreciate you being here. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you're like, no way, JR, this Oregon team, They don't have a future. Let me know, but at least let me know and give me a reason why, right? Don't just be like, hey, you're stupid. They're not going anywhere. Well, okay, that's a stupid response. So if you got a reason why, let me know. Or if you're like me and you like, hey, I just really believe in Dan Lanning, Taj Lapoy, Will Stein. Like, I think all these coaches and everything going on here, it's a really good situation. I really believe in Oregon. Let me know and give me your thoughts as well. Love to hear from everybody. We'll be back with a show again here soon. Probably not Thursday night because we just got a lot of basketball games going on Thursday night, but we'll see. We'll try to do another show. At the very least, we'll be back Sunday night at 9 p.m. to talk football once again. Thanks so much for watching. Appreciate it.